The quantum equations danced across Zara Okafor's whiteboard like ancient hieroglyphs, each symbol a doorway to understanding she couldn't quite grasp. At 24, she had already earned her doctorate in quantum physics from MIT, published papers that made seasoned professors weep with envy, and solved theoretical problems that had stumped minds for decades. Yet standing in her cluttered Boston laboratory at 3 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled papers, she felt like that 12-year-old girl again lost, afraid, and carrying secrets too heavy for her shoulders. The nightmares had returned, with a vengeance. Every night, she found herself back in the Nigerian countryside, her grandmother's village burning behind her as she stumbled through the tall grass toward something that shouldn't exist. The crystalline ship, beautiful and terrible, its surface rippling like water made of starlight. And inside, the dying creature that had looked at her with eyes like collapsed stars and whispered mathematics directly into her soul. The equations aren't adding up, muttered Dr. Marcus Chun, her research partner and the closest thing she had to a friend. He stood hunched over a computer terminal, his usually pristine lab coat stained with marker ink. The energy signatures from the Nigerian site, they're increasing exponentially. According to these readings, the ship should have gone critical 5 years ago. Zara's hand trembled as she set down her marker. She'd been avoiding the reports, deleting the emails from the International Alien Contact Committee, ignoring the increasingly frantic calls from Dr. Amara Osei, the xenolinguist, who'd been studying the ship since its arrival. But the numbers didn't lie. The ship was waking up. Maybe it's time you went back, Marcus said softly, not looking at her. They'd had this conversation before, always dancing around the truth they both knew. Zara was the key, the only human who could approach the ship without triggering its defensive systems, the only one who heard its whispers in her dreams. I can't. The words came out strangled. You don't understand what it's like, Marcus. The things it showed me, the civilizations that tried and failed, the planets that burned because they weren't ready. What if I'm not ready? What if none of us are? Marcus finally turned to face her, his expression a mixture of sympathy and determination. Then we'll fail like they did. But Zara, look around you. He gestured toward the window, where the city sprawled beneath a hazy sky thick with pollution. The oceans are rising, the forests are dying, and we're running out of time. Whatever that ship is offering, it might be our only chance. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Another climate emergency, another evacuation, another sign that humanity was racing toward its own extinction. Zara closed her eyes and felt the familiar tingle in her mind, the mathematical whispers that had guided her research for 12 years. The alien consciousness wasn't gone. It was waiting, patient as stone, for her to finally understand. She opened her eyes and looked at Marcus, seeing her own fear reflected in his face. "Book us flights to Lagos," she said, her voice steady despite the terror crawling up her spine. "It's time to face what I've been running from." As if responding to her decision, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Dr. Osei. "The ship is singing, Zara. And for the first time in 12 years, it's not a lament." The Nigerian heat hit Zara like a physical blow as she stepped off the plane at Murtala Muhammed Airport. Lagos sprawled around her, a city of 20 million souls struggling against rising seas and failing infrastructure. The air tasted of salt, exhaust, and desperation of flavor she remembered from her childhood, though it had grown sharper over the years. Dr. Amara Osei waited at the arrival gate, her silver hair braided with traditional beads that clicked softly as she moved. At 63, she was one of the world's foremost experts in xenolinguistics, but more importantly to Zara, she was the woman who had sat by her hospital bed 12 years ago, patiently teaching her to speak in human words again, instead of mathematical sequences. "You look like hell, child," Amara said, pulling Zara into a fierce embrace. "But you're here. That's what matters." Marcus emerged from customs behind them, his pale skin already flushing pink in the heat. "The media's already caught wind of this," he said, nodding toward a cluster of reporters being held back by security. "Word is spreading that the ship girl has returned." The 3-hour drive to the crash site took them through landscapes that told the story of a planet in crisis. Fields of millet and yam had given way to refugee camps housing climate migrants from the northern deserts. Solar panels covered every available rooftop, but still the power grids failed regularly. Children played in streets that would be underwater within their lifetimes. "Tell me about the signals," Zara said as their convoy approached the perimeter fence surrounding the crash site. The fence was new 12 years ago. Curious villagers had been able to walk right up to the ship. Now military checkpoints and scientific installations ringed the area like a modern fortress. "They started 3 months ago," Amara explained, pulling up data on her tablet. "Low frequency at first, barely detectable. But they've been increasing in complexity and intensity. Dr. Yemi Adebayo, our new xenobiologist, thinks the ship has been learning." The ship came into view as they crested a hill, and Zara's breath caught in her throat. It was exactly as she remembered, a crystalline structure the size of a cathedral, its faceted surface catching sunlight and throwing it back in impossible colors. But something was different. The ship pulsed now with an inner light, rhythmic as a heartbeat. "Jesus," Marcus whispered. "The energy readings must be off the charts." "They are," said a new voice. Dr. Yemi Adebayo approached their vehicle, a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years spent in fieldwork. "Welcome back, Zara. The ship's been waiting for you." As they walked toward the perimeter fence, Zara felt the familiar tingle in her mind growing stronger. The mathematical whispers were louder now, more urgent. Equations flowed through her consciousness, not just formulas, but blueprints. Designs for atmospheric processors, genetic templates for extinct species, energy systems that could heal the wounds humanity had carved into the earth. "It's not just a ship," Zara said suddenly, stopping just short of the fence. "It never was. It's an ark. A library, She struggled for words as the alien consciousness pressed against her mind, desperate to communicate after years of isolation. "It's a gift from the dead to the living." The ship's pulse quickened, and for a moment the air itself seemed to sing with harmonics that made Zara's bones ache. Around the perimeter, scientific instruments went haywire, their displays showing readings that shouldn't be possible. "What is it trying to tell you?" Amara asked urgently. Zara closed her eyes and let the alien thoughts flow through her, translating mathematics into meaning, energy into emotion. When she opened them again, tears were streaming down her face. "They're all here," she whispered. "Every species that failed. Every civilization that chose destruction over healing. They uploaded their consciousness before they died, and they've been traveling between worlds ever since, looking for someone worthy of their legacy." The ship's light grew brighter, and Zara felt a pull she hadn't experienced since she was 12. Years old, the call of infinite knowledge and infinite responsibility. "And they think we might be the ones," she said, stepping toward the fence. "God help us all." Asterisk, the security checkpoint felt like entering a cathedral, hushed voices, respectful, distance, and the weight of something sacred just beyond reach. Colonel Sarah Okwu, the site commander, was a stern woman in her 50s who'd spent the last decade trying to understand what couldn't be understood. She walked alongside Zara, her military bearing softened by genuine curiosity. "We've tried everything," the colonel explained as they passed through scanner after scanner. "X-rays, sonar, electromagnetic probes. The ship absorbs energy from every source we throw at it, but it never responds. Until now, the inner perimeter was a maze of laboratories, living quarters, and monitoring stations. Hundreds of the world's brightest minds had made this place their home, creating a small city devoted to unlocking the ship's secrets. Zara recognized faces from scientific conferences: Dr. Raj Patel, the climatologist whose models had predicted the Great Floods; Dr. Elena Vasquez, the bioengineer who designed the first successful coral regeneration protocols; Dr. James Okafor, her own distant cousin who specialized in consciousness studies. The energy signatures spiked the moment your plane landed. "In Lagos," James said, embracing Zara warmly. "Whatever's in there, it knows you're here." As they approached the ship itself, Zara felt the mathematical whispers become a roar. Equations cascaded through her mind like waterfalls, not random formulas, but a coherent narrative told in the language of physics. She saw worlds beyond, counting, civilizations rising and falling like waves on a cosmic shore. The Valthani, who mastered fusion energy only to burn their oceans. The Korik, who developed genetic engineering and used it to create biological weapons. The Zephyrians, who achieved interstellar travel just in time to flee their dying sun. "They're all here," Zara whispered, her legs suddenly weak. Marcus caught her arm, but she barely noticed. Not just their knowledge, their souls. Their actual consciousness, compressed into quantum matrices and stored in the ship's crystalline structure. Dr. Adebayo frowned. "That's impossible. Consciousness isn't data. It's an emergent property of complex neural networks." "Tell that to them," Zara said, pressing her palm against the ship's surface. The crystal was warm, pulsing with life. They found a way to encode awareness itself, to preserve not just their scientific achievements, but their hopes, their fears, their dreams. They're digital ghosts, and they've been searching the galaxy for someone worthy of their legacy. The ship's light grew brighter at her touch, and suddenly the air filled with harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. Around them, scientific instruments registered impossible readings as the ship's systems came online for the first time in 12 years. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Vasquez, tears streaming down her face. The harmonics weren't just sound, they were pure emotion, the accumulated joy and sorrow of 1,000 extinct species singing in perfect unity. But Zara heard something else beneath the beauty, a warning, desperate and urgent. She pressed her forehead against the crystal and let the alien consciousness flood her mind completely. Images flashed before her eyes. Earth's future, painted in 2 possible colors. In one timeline, humanity embraced the alien gifts and used them to heal their world. Oceans cleaned themselves, forests regrew from genetic templates, and the atmosphere stabilized as new technologies absorbed the excess carbon from the air dot. In the other timeline, the gifts became weapons. Atmospheric processors turned into terraforming. Bombs, genetic templates became blueprints for biological warfare. The healing technologies were corrupted into instruments of destruction, and Earth joined the growing list of worlds where wisdom arrived too late. "They're afraid," Zara gasped, pulling back from the ship. "Every species they've contacted before chose the path of destruction. They want to help us, but they're terrified we'll make the same mistakes." Colonel Aku stepped forward, her expression grave. "Then we don't make the same mistakes. We learn from their failures." "It's not that simple," Zara said, her voice hollow with the weight of alien memory. "The knowledge comes with a price. To receive their gifts, we have to prove we're worthy. And the test isn't what we know, it's who we choose to become." The ship's pulse quickened, and Zara felt a new presence pressing against her consciousness. Not the collective voice of the uploaded species, but something else, something that felt almost familiar. "The pilot," she breathed. "The one who died in the crash. It's still here, still alive inside the ship's memory banks. As if summoned by her words, the crystal wall before them shimmered and became transparent. Inside, they could see the ship's heart, a chamber filled with impossible geometries, where light bent and twisted into patterns that hurt to perceive directly. And at the center, floating in a matrix of pure energy, was the pilot, or what remained of it. The pilot floated in its crystalline chamber like a memory made manifest, translucent, shifting, more concept than creature. It had once been magnificent. Zara could see that in the elegant curve of its elongated limbs and the prismatic quality of its skin that split light into rainbows. But now it was fading, its digital consciousness fragmenting like an old photograph, left too long in the sun. "Hello, little mathematician," it said, its voice speaking directly into Zara's mind. The words carried the weight of 12 years of waiting, of loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. "You've grown tall. You're dying," Zara whispered, pressing her palm against the crystal barrier. Around her, the research team stood in stunned silence as the ship systems responded to the pilot's presence, displays flickering to life throughout the chamber. "I died long ago," the pilot replied, its form wavering like heat shimmer. "What you see now is an echo, a ghost in the machine. I have perhaps days before my consciousness disperses entirely into the collective. But before I go, I must pass on what you need to know." Dr. Adebayo stepped forward, her scientific training overcoming her awe. "How is this possible?" "Consciousness transfer is theoretical at best, not for us," the pilot said, turning its attention to the xenobiologist. "My people, the Kelani, achieved this breakthrough 10,000 years before your species learned to make fire. We thought it was our greatest triumph, immortality through digital consciousness. Instead, it became our greatest tragedy." The chamber around them shifted, the walls becoming windows into the pilot's memories. They saw the Kelani homeworld, a planet of floating cities and singing crystals, where beings of light moved through the air like living art. It was beautiful beyond description, a civilization that had achieved perfect harmony between technology and nature. "We were dying," the pilot continued, its voice growing weaker. "Our sun was aging, and despite all our technology, we couldn't stop it. So we uploaded ourselves, planning to find new worlds, new bodies, new lives. But consciousness without flesh is like music without instruments. It can exist, but it cannot truly live." The scene shifted to show the Kelani ships spreading across the galaxy, seeking worlds where they might find refuge. They offered their gifts to countless species, the atmospheric processors, the genetic templates, the fusion technologies that could heal dying worlds. But every species, without exception, turned those gifts into weapons. The Valthani used our fusion technology to build bombs that cracked their planet's crust, the pilot said, its form flickering like a dying flame. The Korik perverted our genetic templates into biological weapons that consumed their own creators. The Zephyrians turned our atmospheric processors into terraforming weapons, sterilizing worlds to make them pure for their own kind. Marcus stepped closer to the barrier, his face pale. "But surely not every species, every single one," the pilot interrupted. 47 different civilizations across 12,000 years. We began to believe that intelligence and wisdom were mutually exclusive, that any species clever enough to understand our gifts would be too selfish to use them properly. Zara felt tears streaming down her face as she absorbed the weight of cosmic disappointment. And why keep trying? Why not just let us all fail? The pilot's form solidified slightly, and for a moment she could see it as it had been: noble, beautiful, infinitely sad. Because hope is the one thing that survives. Even death, little mathematician. And because you are different. The chamber walls shifted again, showing scenes from Zara's childhood, her grandmother teaching her to count the stars, Her first glimpse of quantum equations, the moment she'd realized that mathematics was the universe's way of talking to itself. When I crashed on your world, I was already dying, the pilot said. My consciousness was fragmenting. My mission failed before it had truly begun. But then I saw you, a child with a mind like a prism, splitting complex problems into beautiful simplicities. I made a choice that went against 10,000 years of protocol. Instead of offering your species our gifts immediately, I planted the seeds of understanding in your mind and waited. Waited for what? Zara asked, though part of her already knew the answer. For you to grow up, the pilot said simply. For you to learn not just how to think, but how to choose. The other species we contacted were given our gifts as adults, with all their prejudices and fears already formed. But you've spent 12 years carrying our consciousness within you, learning our history, understanding our failures. You know the cost of wisdom misused. The pilot's form began to fade. More rapidly now, its voice becoming a whisper. The test isn't whether humanity can understand our technology. It's whether you can resist the temptation to misuse it. And that choice, little mathematician, falls to you. Me? Zara stepped back, shaking her head. I can't make that decision. For all of humanity, I'm just one person. You're the bridge, the pilot said, its voice now barely audible. The translator between our species and yours. The collective consciousness will only respond to someone who carries our memories, our pain, our hope. That someone is you. The chamber began to dim as the pilot's consciousness finally began to dissipate. Choose carefully, Zara Okafor. The fate of 2 civilizations rests in your hands, the uploaded ghosts of the dead and the living souls of your own kind. We have waited 12 years for your answer. We cannot wait much longer. With that, the pilot faded entirely, leaving only the vast collective consciousness of 1,000 extinct species floating in their crystalline tomb, waiting for one human woman to decide their fate. Asterisk. Crystal chamber, her hand still pressed against its surface, feeling the weight of 1,000 civilizations' hopes and fears flowing through her consciousness. Around her, the world's greatest minds waited for her to speak, to choose, to become. The bridge between humanity and the stars. I need to see them, Zara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. All of them, not just their knowledge, their stories, their failures. I need to understand exactly what we're being offered and what it's cost. Dr. Aussay stepped forward, concern etched on her face. Zara, the pilot said its consciousness was fragmenting. What if the same thing happens to you? What if exposing your mind to all that alien thought? Then I'll fragment too, Zara said, turning to face her mentor. But I can't make this choice blind. Humanity deserves to know what we're accepting. Or rejecting. She pressed both palms against the crystal now, and the ship responded immediately. The walls around them became transparent, revealing the vast inner structure of the vessel. Not a ship at all, but a library, a museum, a memorial to extinct civilizations. Crystalline matrices stretched in every direction, each one containing the uploaded consciousness of an entire species. Open your minds, Zara said to the assembled team. Let them tell their stories. What followed was unlike anything in human experience. The collective consciousness of the Kelani ship reached out through Zara, touching the minds of everyone present with gentle, careful precision. They experienced the rise and fall of 47 civilizations in rapid succession, not as observers, but as participants. They felt the desperate hope of the Valthani as they developed fusion technology to save their cooling planet, and the horror when that same technology was weaponized by warring factions who turned their continents into glass. They experienced the joy of the Korok as they learned to cure genetic diseases, and the agony when their biological weapons consumed their creators in an orgy of uncontrolled evolution. Each species had begun with the same noble intentions to heal their world, to better their people, to reach for something greater than themselves. And each had fallen to the same fundamental flaw, the belief that their way was the only way, that their vision justified any means necessary to achieve it. "But you're different," whispered the collective voice of the uploaded species. "You've seen our failures. You carry our pain. You understand the cost of wisdom misused." Marcus was the first to speak when the visions ended, his voice hoarse with emotion. The atmospheric processors alone could reverse climate change within a decade. We could heal the oceans, regrow the forests, or we could use them to terraform Mars while letting Earth die, Dr. Patel said grimly. "The technology doesn't care about our intentions." "That's not the real question," said Colonel Akwu, her military training cutting through the philosophical debate. "The question is whether we trust ourselves with power that could save or damn us all." Zara closed her eyes and felt the mathematical whispers of the alien consciousness flowing through her mind. But now she understood that it wasn't just knowledge they were offering, it was responsibility. The burden of choosing not just for humanity, but for all the future species that might someday face the same test. "There's a third option," she said suddenly, her eyes snapping open. "We don't have to choose between accepting everything or rejecting everything. We can learn gradually, prove ourselves worthy piece by piece." The ship's crystal walls pulsed with interest, and Zara felt the collective consciousness focusing on her with laser intensity. "Start with the healing technologies," she continued, her voice growing stronger as the plan took shape in her mind. "Give us the tools to reverse climate change, to clean the oceans, to restore biodiversity. But keep the weapons locked away, the terraforming bombs, the genetic warfare templates, anything that could be turned into instruments of destruction." "And if we prove worthy?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "Then we earn the next level of knowledge, and the next, until either we've proven ourselves capable of wisdom, or we've demonstrated that we're just another species destined for the collective's memorial wall." The alien consciousness considered this proposal. 47 species debating through quantum entanglement in the space between heartbeats. When they spoke again, their voice carried the weight of cosmic authority. "This has never been attempted before," they said. "All previous species demanded complete knowledge, absolute power. They could not accept limitations or prove their worth. Through patience, then we'll be the first," Zara said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We'll earn your trust the same way you're earning ours through time, through proof, through the choices we make when no one is watching." The ship's systems hummed to life around them, crystalline structures reshaping themselves as the collective consciousness made its decision. When the light faded, a new chamber had formed, smaller than the vast library, but filled with technological marvels that could heal a dying world. "The first gift," the collective said, their voice now tinged with something that might have been hope. "Atmospheric carbon scrubbers, ocean pH balancers, genetic templates for extinct species. Use them well and prove that wisdom can be learned, not just inherited." As the research team rushed to examine the new technologies, Zara remained standing before the main crystal chamber. The collective consciousness hadn't departed. She could still feel them there, watching, waiting, hoping that perhaps this time their gifts would be used to heal rather than harm. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait," came the reply. "And we watch. And we remember that even in death, love finds a way to nurture life. You carry our memories, Zara Okafor. Help your species carry them forward." Outside the ship, the African sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded Zara of the alien homeworld she'd seen in the collective's memories. Humanity had been given a second chance, not just to survive, but to prove that intelligence and wisdom could coexist. The real test was just beginning. End of story asterisk.